It's great to be here, and I think this discussion tees up some important issues. One is, what is the respective role of industry and government in dealing with privacy in this complex world, and also how do we balance the privacy interests of users and probably consumers in particular as they're navigating this world that, as Richard was describing. And I think it's always helpful to start with, what do we think consumers are thinking about these issues? And we've done some polling of our customers and some focus groups, and we have found that they consistently rate very highly that privacy is extremely important to them. I know there have been some, maybe some impression or some press reports that that's not the case, or that customers say it's important to them but don't act that way. I really fundamentally disagree with that. I think I think the reality is more complicated. I think on the one hand, consumers value privacy, but they also find incredible value from what they're getting on the internet, whether it's the content or the new types of applications. And therefore, I think we have to approach this as, how do we give them what they want in both areas so they can enjoy the benefits of their online experience. But I also think they're struggling to try and manage and control their information in this new world. And what we see is concern that they're losing control, or they're not sure how to navigate it. And I think, I agree with Richard, I think we really need to work together to try and figure out how to improve that, and that's not really a traditional regulatory versus industry kind of issue. Is not going to solve this problem. It's really going to be new technologies and new standards of practice that are going to help to achieve that. And if there's one theme I think is what we really hear from our customers is they want a consistent framework that's going to give them the trust that they have on the internet across what they're doing. And how can we get there? So let's start with where we've come and what has happened to date. We also have been doing a lot of work over the past year or two on trying to update our whole approach to privacy to reflect this new online world. We did a major revision of our privacy policies last year and went from 17 different consumer privacy policies down to one integrated policy. We also did a lot of work to try and streamline the discussion. But again, one of the messages we were getting from our customers is, I want a consistent policy from AT&T. I don't want to have to second guess what the rules are for every different service. And I don't really care whether you have different regulations in those areas or not. So that was a step in the right direction. And now I think we see some progress among the industry to try and establish some better transparency across websites. So we're part of this larger Internet Advertising Bureau initiative to put a consistent label on online advertising. It's a little blue eye that allows the user to click on that to get more information about what information is being collected and let them opt out of behavioral advertising if that's what they want to do. It's a step in the right direction, and I think it shows that the industry is trying to work together to create some more standardized presentation of these issues to users. We've also done that on some of our websites as well. We've taken our traditional directory services, now moving online, and as we've done that, we've tried to give consumers more information about the data that's being collected and the options that they have. And we've also translated that into greater control, similar to what Richard was describing for Facebook, where they can go in and see their profile and make some choices about either not being tracked or having having input into the types of information that they want collected. So again, I think those are the types of things that we think users really want. They want to be able to easily get the information and then be able to act on that. But I think we also have to be honest about what the challenges are, and I think the behavioral advertising is probably the more mature issue, particularly among this audience with the regulators in the industry. And the question is, how do we continue to expand and improve the user's ability to navigate it? But I also think, to some extent, that challenge is already being eclipsed by the bigger issue of this application ecosystem that's now being created, where you buy an AT&T cell phone service, then you buy your iPhone from Apple, and then you're engaging with applications from the iTunes store, and you've now got a whole series of providers and services that the consumer is interacting with that are making use of their personal data. Now, clearly consumers want and expect that this is the great value that they're getting from the service. So starting from a presumption that we need to figure out how to enable this and to enable this ecosystem in a way that's also going to protect their privacy. And I think that's going to be one of the big challenges that we have going forward. Is it's inherently more complicated when I, as AT&T, don't control the relationship that they have with the individual application provider, but there has to be kind of a seamless, clear process for the user to understand who's got what information and which permissions they're giving. And we see some opportunity in some of the work that's happening on identity management to potentially help create this kind of trust framework that Ann was referencing for this online world. In the United States, the White House has initiated a roadmap for identity management, which is an idea that's been around a long time, but I think there's kind of renewed vigor about trying to make it actually happen. That would allow a framework for users to be able to put their secure information with a set of trusted identity managers who could then help navigate transactions on the internet. And the idea is to use that for high priority transactions on the internet, such as banking and things like that. But I think you could take the same concept and apply that to privacy to say, if I could have a trusted relationship with my information with maybe a smaller number of parties that I trust with it, they could help me navigate the internet and maintain my privacy and maintain the control over my information more easily. And I think this is the type of industry-wide solution that we really need to be looking for, so that the user doesn't have to count on and navigate each individual application provider or website as they're trying to figure this out. So I think we see some opportunities there. More broadly, I think there are some other areas where consistency and updating the privacy regulations are really going to be a challenge going forward, and I'm just going to touch on them briefly in the interest of time. One is obviously the Internet of Things and machine-to-machine is going to be at another area where very sensitive information is being collected about users. However, we also have an interest in enabling these great new applications. I think it's interesting in the United States, take smart grid, for example. We're going through some proceedings at the Department of Energy on setting the standards and the framework for smart grid. And of the two reports they issued last week, one was on the communications needs of smart grid. The other big report was on privacy. So privacy from the very beginning has been part of the discussion, part of the process. There's also work going on at the National Institute of Standards. So I think that is a major shift in thinking in both the private sector and the government, and there was a lot of agreement actually among both that this had to be something that was addressed early on. So I think we'll see more of that, where privacy and security by design upfront are being viewed as the way to help solve these issues proactively. And it's really about how do we encourage the right standards to develop. Cloud computing obviously is another area that raises a lot of privacy concerns, but it also raises challenges for us as a service provider where you have such a disparity of privacy laws out there. And this is kind of a consistency issue from the other perspective, which is how do we have a more consistent framework so that the services can develop. And I think when you get into these international data flows, that's an incredibly complicated issue. But I think that will continue to be a growing area of challenges for policymakers and for us in the industry. And then finally, a major issue that's just starting to emerge is law enforcement access in this new world of incredible amounts of information online. And in the United States, we are part of a coalition that has been recommending a series of targeted updates to the wiretap laws to try and reflect the growth of new services in cloud computing. And the idea is that the traditional balancing of privacy and law enforcement can and should be updated to reflect the new realities of location-based services in cloud computing. So, for example, the same legal protections that apply to an email that's residing on your hard drive should carry through when you're transmitting that email, if the email is stored on a cloud, or if the email is sent to someone else who's then opened it. And right now, there are actually some different legal standards that kick in different parts of that process. So I expect that'll be yet another area where really falls under the guise of consumers should be able to rely on the same privacy expectations for their information throughout the process. So there are really many aspects to to these issues, but I think the core bottom line principle is customers do value their privacy, but the real challenge for all of us, and I think it really is as much of a technical challenge as it is a regulatory or legal challenge, is how do we enable that consistent trust framework and privacy framework for them while giving them all the great advantages of the services that they're taking advantage of, which require them to either store information online or share information. So, thank you.